Start the recording. And Ian, thank you for letting us record your talk and putting it up on our YouTube channel. Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose. So glad you could join us today to talk about dark skies. We'll start with our usual introductions, and I think when you hear the somewhat environmental inclinations of a lot of our members, you'll understand why. I think you got a pretty sympathetic audience this morning for your talk. But Elaine, can we start with you? Do you want to do a brief introduction for yourself?
Did you say me, Elaine?
Yes, Elaine. Yeah.
Okay, Elaine Alshoff. Long involvement with disability rights. Mother of 3, grandmother of 3, and that's it.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Hanna. As Doug says, interested in all things environmental. I spent my career doing hazardous waste site assessment and cleanup, but as a child, I was passionately interested in astronomy and stars and space. So very much looking forward to what you have to say.
Yeah, and Doug, I moderate these sessions. Sarah and I have a vacation place in New Hampshire, and one of the best things about it is how much darker the skies are there than here. It's also a very low traveled area. We've been known to lie down in the middle of the highway because that's where you see the most sky.
And perfectly safe. You can hear the cars miles before they get there. So
let's see. We have somebody on iPhone with some glasses on them. It doesn't have a name. If you want to identify and come off mute as well.
Hi, I'm Tom Palmer, a resident of Natick, 4 or 5 year resident of Natick, and I guess I describe myself just as a skeptic in general.
Happy to have you.
Welcome aboard.
We love skeptics. All right, thanks, Tom. Kathleen.
Hi, good morning, Ian. I'm interested in hearing your talk. I'm a fairly long-time resident of Natick. I'm on the library's board of trustees, and I'm interested in anything relating to any type of pollution, but light pollution is particularly personal to me because I learned in my 20s I actually don't shut my eyes all the way at night, so I'm very sensitive to light in the evening when I should be sleeping. Thank you.
Brian.
Hi, Brian McPherson. I've been here in Natick for 30 years, environmentalist and really interested in this light issue that, we've got a lot of issues in Metro West, kind of because of just lots of stuff. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, Brian. Cindy?
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today, and I love your background.
Yeah.
I'm a 4-year resident in Natick. I grew up in Weston, and then I spent 21 years most recently in Roslindale. So I do like, when I first got here, COVID happened. We weren't supposed to even walk outside. And so I would sneak out and walk the streets of Natick in the very late night. And sometimes there's that farm, what's the farm on Union Street that's now being the school? A couple of times I just went out in the field and just lay on the ground looking up at the stars. And I'm very interested in this topic because when I sleep at my mom's, the neighbors across the street, their lights shine right in the window, and my mom turns off her porch light at night, and I think that's like something that some people do, or maybe older people do, because that's what they're born in the Depression. You just turn off your lights.
Right.
Other people now, they have the solar lights, or it's for security, or I don't know. It's all pretty interesting. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Bill?
Hi, Bill Ramage. I was just thinking about Crater Lake, Oregon. There's nothing for miles around it. Up a mile, and unbelievable how many stars there were. I'm also interested. I have the same problem Cindy does, in that my neighbor has a light over their garage that shines into our bedroom and keeps us up at night. So I understand what your issues are, and really interested to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Bill. Jim.
Hi, everyone. I'm a longtime Natick resident. I have in the past several years taken a keen interest in native plant biology and botany and horticulture. And but I'm also on the town Trails and Forest Stewardship Committee. The aspect of this that interests me is that I learned that light has a negative effect on the life cycles of some beneficial insects, particularly trees and oak trees. And so I'm interested in it from that point of view. And then the other point of view is, why do we do this? What's the psychology between about feeling the need to light up everything at night?
Point. Thank you. Paul.
Good morning. I thought I was going to be late this morning. I'm Paul Carew, and I agree this every topic Doug and Sarah bring up to this Coffee with a Purpose has been terrific, and a learning curve many times for me. And this also, and I think I'm like the majority of the people. I don't like light shining in my bedroom or living room all night long, and it does happen. It does happen. Everybody says, well, let's put some shades up. Well, I'd like to be a little more proactive without getting in trouble. So I'm interested to hear what's said today.
Thanks, Paul. Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Gentry. I've been here in Natick a little over 20 years. And I just over time, I can remember always seeing lightning bugs and stars and everything as a child. And now you definitely can tell that it's a difference. And, I live in suburban landscape here, and that's what I lived in as a child too, but people didn't leave their lights on all night, the sensor lights and the party lights and everything. It's just all over the place. So hoping we can do something about it.
Thanks, Chris. Cheryl? Oh, you're still on mute, Cheryl. There you go.
All right. So I grew up in Natick, but in addition to my home here, I have a place in northern Maine where I'm secretary for a land trust, and we have just, we think, succeeded in conserving 3,000 acres. And we're investigating applying for sanctuary status, sanctuary status. So I'm interested in that topic, along with everybody else here, I guess.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. Sally?
Good morning. I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm a kind of a fairly new resident to Natick, but I enjoy all the discourse that we have on our Monday mornings, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Sally. Brinley?
Good morning. Brinley Vickers, 23-year resident, I think, of Natick. I've been interested in this subject my entire life. I am also one of those people that can't have lights on. My family thinks I'm crazy. Well, I have to have everything dark. I have like black tape on the little buttons that we have in our house that you don't ever shut down, the cable box and the modem and all of the things that have lights flashing all the time. Our little solar device that collects the solar device has these flashing lights, and I have to put something over them because otherwise it bothers me, even though I'm in the other end of the house. So I think that light pollution is a very big deal. And I'm very excited to hear your talk. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Brinley. And it's great to see a few new faces. It may be that you folks are all part of the Dark Skies Association. But if anyone who isn't already on our email list would like to get notified of future talks, just put your email in the chat and I'll see that you get added to our list. So with that, Anne, let me turn it over to you. So welcome. Oh, I'm sorry. Who did I miss? Did I miss someone?
Martin.
Oh, folks in the room. I apologize. Yes. Here we go.
Out of sight, out of mind. We should be on the
There we go. Right.
screen. Martin Kessel. In addition to kind of doing the technical hosting, I've been a long time member of town meeting and equally long chair of the Open Space Advisory.
Great, thanks.
Is there somebody else?
Anne doesn't need any introduction to me because I know her from our church environmental ministry team here. But I just want to say that thanks to Anne for coming. And she's also offered, and I hope you all can note this, to do an event for Earth Day. We did one 2 years ago up on Pagan Hill. We had some very excited astronomers up there to look on a day that Anne could probably, a night that Anne could probably explain better than me. But it was a good night for viewing stars. Had a good time up there. And we might do that again, I'm not sure.
To be defined.
Yeah.
We have the date.
We shouldn't ignore Christmas lights, as it's a special season.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick, and thank you for bringing Anne to us. Rick was the one that put us in touch with each other. Okay, sorry for overlooking you guys. All right, now take it away, Anne.
I'm just saying to Rick and Doug for allowing me to come and inviting me to come and talk to everyone. It sounds like there's a lot of people who already have some knowledge about like pollution, so that's great. I prepared an introduction, so there's a little, maybe it might be a little bit elementary for some people, but I think it's important to see the bases. And then there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers. So if there's something particular that you want to ask, I'd be more than happy to respond, of course. So I'm probably the only one here who doesn't live in Natick. I actually live in Needham, and I've been in Needham for 21 years. But I grew up in Minnesota, and it's similar to north of Maine in the sense that when I grew up anyway, you could lay out on the dock in a lake, there's tons of lakes up there, and see the Milky Way and see the Aurora Borealis, and I took it for granted. I really did. And then like Rick said, I'm in this environmental team at our church, and I read this book called The End of Night by Paul Bogard. Paul Bogard is a fellow Minnesotan, but at the time he was teaching at James Madison University. Now he's in St. Paul, but reading his book, I was shocked because at one point he said, yeah, when I was a kid, I could see the lights. I couldn't see any lights. It was all dark. And now I can see on the horizon the lights from Reamer and Longville. And I know that doesn't mean anything to you guys from out here, but as like, I said to myself, holy smokes, he must have been on Big Thunder Lake because I was on Little Bass Lake just next door. And so I contacted him and just to check out to see if my theory was right. And we ended up having a great discussion, and he sent me toward James Lowenthal, who's a professor of astronomy at Smith College in Northampton. And since then, James has become the president of the local chapter of the Dark Sky International Massachusetts chapter. And I was elected vice president about a year ago. I just renewed this weekend. I've been working on this topic since 2017. I'm not an expert. I have an engineering background, so I'm getting a lot of it, but it's just something that people have been in Massachusetts been working on for 30 years. And we feel like we're finally starting to make some progress. This issue is starting to become more and more known. And it has to do, I think, with the advent of LED lighting. Because LED lighting, like people were saying, it didn't used to be this bright out in Natick like it was when I grew up here. Well, in the last 10 years, light pollution has increased by 10%. And a lot of it has to do with that LED lights are just really cheap to run. So there's an advantage that they reduce the energy consumption, but then you have the problem of, well, it doesn't cost that much, so let's go and light up everything around us. So I'm going to start my screen sharing. See. I already practiced this once, so hopefully.
Got it.
Okay, so now I did do slideshow. All right.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
So people probably recognize this. It's a photo taken by NASA from people who are up in the satellite orbiting and probably the space station. It's taken in 2016, and a lot of people look at it and go, "Oh, that's so pretty," everything. But what you see is actually waste. So everything that is going up into that you can see from the space station is photons that are going forever into the universe from our planet. So it's a recent phenomenon, because if you look at electric lighting, it really started with about Thomas Edison about 150 years ago. Before that, people used a lot more. There was some oil lighting, then gas lighting. People used a lot of candles at night too in their homes, and they lived more, was more agriculture, and they lived more in sync with nature, like the cycles of light and dark that our rotation around the sun and tilt of the earth give us. So I then targeted looking specifically at Natick itself. So there's some good news and some bad news in these two pictures. The left one is 2012 and the right one is 2022. And I said the biggest flagrant degradation you can see is around Shoppers World and Natick Mall. There was a small red spot there. Red is worse, of course, in 2012. And now there's really a lot of light pollution coming from there. These pictures are taken from a VIIRS system. It's also a satellite view, but then it's coded. The other part that looks where it's improved, so I don't want to completely, say, can you see my cursor? Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Around this Natick soldier system, it was, if you look, whoops. How do I go
Left arrow?
here? I did.
Oh,
there it is.
yeah. It has delay.
It's touchy.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. I'm just gonna mention it then. This is where the Natick Soldier System Center. It was a little bit pinkish looking in 2012, and that's improved now. So they've done something to make it better. The other area of concern that I have, and some people were talking about, the conservation land around here, is that the Broadmoor Sanctuary seems to have some encroachment. The other thing to know is okay, well, Natick Mall and Shoppers World, how much of an impact does it have? And in generally speaking, what's happening within 2 or 3 miles has a big impact on what your night sky looks like. So that's going to impact people who are you wouldn't be able to see the lights, the stars very well, even if you are in Broadmoor Sanctuary at night, because the Shoppers World is within probably 3-4 miles. And definitely it impacts downtown Natick and the people who live in that area. So the topics I'm going to cover after that brief introduction is the definition of light pollution, what the issues are with it, what the solutions are, which is good news. Then specifically looking at Natick and what Natick has on the books for lighting bylaws, what kind of actions people can take, and what resources are available. We'll start with definition. What is light pollution? So on the left, I have an infographic about what exactly it is. So the triangular part that's bright yellow in the lower left-hand corner on the left image is actually useful light. And so what does useful light mean? It's meaning what is going to help that pedestrian to be able to see where they're going, is essentially that. The rest of it is all light pollution. So you have some light that's escaping up from the fixture because it's unshielded. You've got the pedestrian who's getting glare in their eyes because of the unshielding as well. You've got, and people were mentioning this, light trespass is when one light source, unwanted light source is from an abutter is going into your house facade or into your windows and bothering you. It's a nuisance. There's reflected light going up, and anything that ends up going up is oftentimes reflected back down by the clouds, and that's a phenomenon called sky glow. So you can see that haze in the sky. It's all reflected back, and if there's no clouds, it goes back to the satellite view, which is going out into space. So the other thing that's not on this infographic that's light pollution is overlighting and clutter. So if you have just too many lights together and it's just, or the intensity of the light sources are just too much for the situation, that's also light pollution, and it contributes to all of those things that you see on the left. And then the other part is blue light spectral content in the LEDs. So this is a little bit on the technical side, but if you go to the store and you buy a light bulb and it says 2700 K, the profile of the light spectrum, if you were to, analyze it in a lab, looks like the upper left-hand corner. So there's a small blue spike, there's a small blue content. 3000 K, there's a bigger one, 4000 K, there's an even bigger one, and 5000 K and up is dramatic. And those are the blue content is a problem because it perturbs us, our circadian rhythms. Well, I guess I'll get into the problems with it, but basically, for the most part, you want to keep the color temperature is what this K number is, Kelvin number. You want to keep it as low as possible because the blue spike is lower in all those cases. So what are the issues? And here we'll get into it, the human health. So when you go to that, talk about that blue light, it impacts the circadian rhythm and it's a hormonal disruptor, increasing the risk of disease. So you've probably heard of people who work night shifts in factories or something, having an increase in risk of breast cancer for women, for example, or even people who work in hospitals. Is because they're not getting the normal hormonal cycles, and that wreaks havoc on our bodies. And it also, because of that, negatively impacts mental health, in particular of adolescents. There's been studies that have shown that that is an issue, especially with adolescents. The second issue concerning humans is safety and security. Well, this is weird. I had a picture on here and it's not showing up. Okay. Glare, when you have glare, it increases difficulty to see intruders or hazards. And there's actually no study that shows that more light at night increases safety. So I was just recently this weekend on a tour of a car dealership that had quote unquote good lighting. And somebody took a measurement of it and it was 7-foot candles. And there are studies that show that anything above 0.2 foot candles does not increase pedestrian safety. So obviously they were putting the lights on to sell cars, right? But after 10 o'clock, you'd say, well, maybe, just in case somebody was there and they didn't want to have an issue with liability of somebody tripping or something, they could reduce it by a factor of 35. Then the third human issue is the loss of the starry night sky and natural darkness. So there's, over time, people have created stories, and this is both in Western and indigenous peoples that have to do with the stars. And so if you can't see the stars, the stories don't make a lot of sense. And these stories have meaning for our existence and understanding of how we came to be in different cultures. And the other factor is awe. So awe is the feeling of being overwhelmed by connectedness and being small at the same time. And that is something that if you have this as a shared human experience, it connects all people together, and there's, in principle, less animosity between people because we have this shared experience. There's also well-being in natural darkness. And when I say natural darkness, it doesn't mean like complete darkness. In Paul Bogard's book, when he goes to the Sahara Desert and he experiences the night sky, he's just blown away by how bright it is. The stars actually give off, on a clear night, they actually give off a lot of light, as does the moon at full moon. So natural darkness doesn't mean complete blackness. And I also want to bring up the concept of the yin yang, and which, it's one way of looking at it, but it's like when you have light, you need darkness as well to be calm. It's just like similar to noise pollution. If you have noise all the time with no rest from noise, it really is detrimental to your mental health. It's the same thing with darkness. You need light. Yes, during the day you need stimulation, but you also need the rest from that stimulation through the darkness. And then the last part I'd say on human impact is it's a social environmental justice issue, because light pollution tends to be worse in disadvantaged communities, and they can't travel oftentimes for economic reasons to dark sky parks to be able to have this experience. So they're subjected to light all the time. So I'm hoping my images come up on the next slide. Let's see if it is. Oh, there it is. I must have done that, had two of the same slides in there. Sorry, I need to eat some drink. So this has to do with glare. If you just see the left photo and you're looking and you're blinded by this light, you have a hard time to see the intruder. And the hand is demonstrating a showing so that you can see the intruder. So it's like more light is not always better. Some light is good, but your eyes are biologically functioning to adapt to see at night. And if you're being blinded by this light, you really can't see what's there. So then I'm going to bring up two other issues of artificial light at night. These don't have to do directly with human beings. It has a negative impact on wildlife and ecology, so it disturbs the mating and pollination patterns in animals and insects. Somebody brought up native plants. It's really a conundrum. So if you plant all these native plants, but then you put a light out that is near those plants, you have an issue, because the insects will be attracted to the native plants, but also to the light, and you actually can kill a lot of nighttime pollinators with light. So it's like a trap. And then trees and plants are also deregulated, resulting in damage or seasonal inavailability of wildlife. So the light, they perceive that as an early spring or late fall, and so they don't bloom at the right time, and they lose their leaves at the wrong time. The trees are more open to damage too, because they hang onto their leaves longer, and then if you get an early snow or a late snow, that can you can end up with a lot of breakage. And the last point I wanted to bring up is wasted energy, coming back to the first slide. So all the light going up is contributing not only to photons going out into space, but greenhouse gas emissions from our planet or into our atmosphere. And then the shorter blue wavelength that you saw on those first pictures with the spectrum, the blue wavelength actually scatters more against water droplets and other molecules that are in the atmosphere. And that's why we have a blue sky during the day, because of that scattering. But it also scatters the nighttime light. So that means that anything that's even going out at a horizontal, and horizontal is actually really bad, it goes out horizontally, it ends up going up too. That's why next part solutions is really important in order to make sure that all the light is going down and is warm color. So in the USA, the estimate is that we are wasting $15.44 billion a year on wasted light. And so I just took a proportion for Natick based on population compared to 330 million people. So that would be 41.6 tons of carbon and $24 million wasted. So it's considerable. So the good news is that it's a solvable issue with a little bit of work, but it's a lot less difficult than what we're facing with greenhouse gases, just generally speaking. So the Illuminating Engineering Society and Dark Sky International have come out recently within the last 2 years of 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. So we're not saying that you have to completely go black, but there are things you can do to really improve the situation. And the first thing is to ask yourself the question, is it a useful light? Somebody talked about, in the past, people didn't light up their porches. And are you expecting visitors at midnight? Well, then leave it on. But if you're not, why is it on? To ask your question, is it useful? Is it because you're afraid of the dark? There's all that too. That's more of an emotional type of response. But I think the first order of thinking is to think about how light is actually being useful, and I mean to human beings. Then, after that, if you deem that it is useful, then the first thing to do is to shield it, and meaning direct it down. So in the first, on the left-hand side, you see what they call orientation. So make sure that the light is shielded. You can't see the source of the light itself, and it's being directed downward, where it is useful so that people can see where they're going. The second thing is to make it a warm color. And then this is going back to those graphs to make sure that you don't have very much blue content in the light. And recently, Pepperell has redone their streetlights, and they actually went to the first in the state to do this, to 2200K, which is about the same as what the old high pressure sodium lights used to emit in terms of color temperature. Then the next thing to do is to reduce the intensity. So I was saying earlier that pedestrians need 0.2 foot candles, which is pretty low intensity, and your eyes actually adapt to the dark within probably 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 at the most. So you just put on the level of light that you need. So if you have a light bulb in your front porch, and boy, you're like, wow, I can see just fine. Try having that number of lumens. So if you put in, and I'll talk about equivalents, a 60 watt equivalent, try going down to a 40 watt equivalent, which basically halves the number of lumens from 800 to 400. Others, similar situations do that. But for homeowners, the big thing is maybe the porch light. And then the last thing that people can do is to install controls. So for example, on a garage door, my neighbor was leaving her garage lights on all night long, and they were pretty bright. And so I asked her if she would consider, and after figuring out that they were environmentally sensitive, if she would consider putting in an amber light that had a motion detector in it, because what she was concerned about was that her daughter was arriving home late at night after working a nighttime job, and that she wanted her daughter to be safe. And I said, so, well, how about this kind of light? And she took my advice and she did it, and it solved the problem. My daughter up in her bedroom couldn't sleep because of the light, and it solved her problem because she wanted her daughter to be safe. So it was a win-win. And it's so much, the lights are so much better. They're floodlights off the garage. So that she ended up getting amber ones, which are like 1800K, so very orange looking. And so they really don't, when they come on for the 3 minutes that they come on, they really don't disturb anybody's sleep, but her daughter can see. So here's some examples of before and after applying these 5 principles. So you see on the left-hand side, the before, you get a lot of unshielded light sources, and there's a lot of glare associated if you were standing in that parking area in front of this house or townhouses maybe. And then the second photo after, they've simply shielded them and probably reduced the intensity of the light sources. And when you shield it, you actually don't need quite as much intensity either, because all the light is being directed down. So you get a lot more on the ground because of the direction. And here's an example of a garage. So same thing. And if you're pulling in with your car on the left-hand side, you're getting that light right in your eyes as well. On the second, on the after photo, they've shielded them and they've put in a warmer light source. So even as a person, you know, and it probably is on a motion detector as well. So a lot of time garage lights are. So you get a lot more of a calm feeling that you're still able to see what you're doing. And here's an example. I think this is from Nantucket, but I'm not sure exactly. So on the left-hand side, again, you have unshielded lights that have a lot of blue content. They're a lot whiter and brighter. And on the left-hand side, you have, on the right-hand side, you have shielded lights that are a lot more warm color temperature. So you can still see where you're going. It's a lot less disturbing to wildlife and for people who are outside too, because they can still get where they need to, and yet the warm color doesn't disturb your circadian rhythm as much as the one on the left. So kind of to Natick's bylaw, Natick does have a lighting bylaw, which is great because a lot of towns don't, but I think there's, out of 351 towns, there's something like 60 to 80 that do. So there's some things that are really great about this lighting bylaw. There's a few things that you can see that are, it's maybe hard to see, but where I've kind of highlighted and bolded it. So the goals are to reduce glare, minimize light trespass, and reduce the cost and waste of energy consumption. So that's all good. What's missing, they don't talk about health and they don't talk about ecology at all. So that could be something that you know, could be maybe improved or people need to be educated about. And then the second part of the, just kind of the framing of the Natick bylaw is that it's applicable to all lots and parcels and districts. So that's good. But then you look at what it's not applied to is 1 and 2 family dwellings. So that's like probably the majority of Natick space. On lots where they're the principal use. So I imagine if there's a mixed use district, then with, you know, some business downstairs and a dwelling upstairs, then it would apply. It doesn't apply to street lighting, but that could be because they have some other bylaw somewhere about street lighting, or that they're counting on the state of Massachusetts to regulate that, which brings up a point that Dark Sky Mass chapter has, for the 3rd time, we've been submitted a bill that's still in the TUE committee, so Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee, in order to regulate the street lighting, to help towns and a state actually make just good decisions about their lighting. It's not to eliminate it, but it's to make good decisions about it. So it's a little bit surprising to me that the scope is pretty limited, but at least you have something, which is a place to start from. So what can you do? Learn more. There are films and online and films on video like DVD. there's videos online of people making presentations like me, but people that, you know, have been at it a lot longer. There's articles that have been coming out. Actually, a lot of magazines like Science have recently published articles, say in the last year. And then there's books such as the one that I mentioned. If you're more into citizen science, there's a program called Globe at Night, and you can go out and take measurements. And it's not, you don't need a meter or anything. You just have look at the sky, and you look at a constellation at different situations of light pollution. So the more light pollution there is, the less stars in a constellation you can see, and you match up saying, oh, this is level 4, this is level 5, or this is level 3, and you send it in as data. So it's pretty easy, and it doesn't need a lot. It's free actually, but they really want to get more people doing this so that they can have better idea of what's going on the ground, because satellites are limited in actually picking up on the blue light, and so actually what you see on the ground is more precise. I mentioned the mass legislation, that the numbers are there. The legislation applies to the state and municipality funded lighting, so street lighting essentially, and road lighting. You can improve your lighting at home. Be an example, or be an example at your place of business if you have a place of business. You can educate your family and your friends. It's a little bit tougher to educate your neighbors. That depends on how receptive they are. You could join our Dark Sky Masses Google group. We always constantly in contact on different issues, and people give each other advice. So if you need advice, you can go there, and there's a lot of experts that can provide advice. And then the other last thing, you can become a member of the Dark Sky International or the Massachusetts chapter at the same time, because if you join Dark Sky International, you automatically become a chapter member. And then here's a list of resources that reflect those actions. There's a petition actually if you want to support the legislation, and I put the link in there for that. And also the link for the Natick bylaw if you want to look at the details of it. So lastly, I'm going to take any questions that people have. We have a few sayings in our Dark Sky Mass chapter that it's not more light, but better light that we're after. And we're looking for dark skies, not dark sidewalks. So it's not, it's not about being unsafe at all. It's about just being better. And then I threw in one thing from Wellesley. They have a campaign for lighting that is going to be, I think it's sports lighting that's juxtaposed to a conservation area. And so their little slogan is "Let there be night." They're trying to find the right solution for that situation.
Well, Anne, this has been a fantastic presentation, and I'm sure people have some questions and comments. I know Brindley has a couple in the chat that I can read out in a second, but I was wondering if you could start by just telling us a little bit more about the Dark Sky organization and the Mass chapter, and maybe the kinds of activities you folks do.
Sure. So the Dark Sky International organization is a core team of about maybe 10 or 12 people. They work internationally, as the name says. They are trying to just disseminate, educate people. So what they do is they have a lot of chapters like ours, because the problems are global, but the solutions are local, right? It's like a lot of things. So we know in Massachusetts that we have 351 towns, and each town has their own bylaws. And whereas like in the Midwest, it's more the counties that have the lighting bylaws. So, we have to work in a different way here than we would in the Midwest. But besides chapters with the Dark Sky International group, what you can do is become an advocate, and there's meetings every months for advocates and just to train people and on how to do things like I'm doing here, educate other people. And they also have, if you're a member, they have another type of more like a strategy. It's like where they have speakers come in that talk about more about where they're going in terms of strategy. So as a member, and I think membership costs like $35. It's not a lot. You can access those types of monthly presentations as well. So Dark Sky International has a really robust program of dark sky places. They have 5 different categories, from anything from a dark sky urban place, like such, they showed an example not too long about having a place like around a zoo, and that positively impacts the zoo animals that are there by having controlled lighting. But it's also a place where people in an urban situation could come and learn about how to do lighting well. And then on the other end of the spectrum is dark sky reserves. So these are big places like out in the desert Southwest, where you have a lot of space and you have really a lot of true natural darkness, you're practically unperturbed, and you have a really good view of the stars. So they're not, even in an urban place, or even a community like Natick, or I can give an example of Nantucket. Nantucket Island is going for a dark sky community designation. So they have certain criteria and hurdles that they have to go through, including having an upgraded bylaw, which they just did last April. So, in another year, I hope to announce that we have a dark sky place in Massachusetts. Is there anything else that you wanted me to cover in what we do?
No, that's a great snapshot. Brindley, I know you had your hand up first. Do you want to?
Sure. Grateful for this presentation. Thank you. I have 5 questions, and I thought others might have the same one. So I'm just going to list them all, and then maybe it can come up in conversation as well with others. The first is, I would love links to the research about the effect on adolescence. I need to show that to my 13-year-old because we argue about it all the time. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The second is, are there links to additional savings by going lower K? Lower, I know there's obviously links for lower wattage, but in terms of going lower K with our streetlights and stuff like that, are there additional savings doing that? And can we use that as a strategy for my number 3, which is, does Dark Sky Mass help us work on our bylaws to get updates? Is that something that we can work with you all about? Because I would love to do that. For holiday lighting and timing versus the help with seasonal depression, and are there studies with that? I know for myself personally, I try to have a darkness, but the holiday lights actually really help my mood. For this 4 weeks that I do them. We've gone to all warm lighting because the cold lighting really bothers me, but I would love to know if there's studies about that and what we can do to help educate people along those lines for better examples of holiday lighting. And then my last is around car headlights. The new LED car headlights, I find them to be blinding and horrible, and they make it so much harder for me when I'm driving at night to pass. Just to drive, because so many of the cars that have gone to the new LED lighting are also the larger vehicles, the large SUV vehicles and the small trucks and the vans. And so their headlight is higher up from the ground than mine, and so than my car, and so much more directly into my eyes. And I'm wondering if we've done studies around that already. Are they causing accidents? Are they actually better? I would love any information about that, and if there's any kind of legislation happening towards that avenue. Thank you.
Okay, so some of these I can address right away. The lower K streetlights and cost savings, there's no additional cost savings. If you're going from an LED to another LED, or if you're going from HPS to any kind of LED, there's no additional savings by going to a warm temperature of light. However, it has all those other benefits. So I think that's where you have to argue that it actually doesn't cost more, which is what we've been arguing in our legislation. It doesn't cost more, but it has a ton of benefits. For all those reasons that I listed and that you talked about as well. Bylaw help, yes. So bylaw, we have a new model lighting ordinance that's ready to go for towns that don't have commercial areas like Natick does or like Needham does. So it's being rolled out into smaller towns that are more rural. In the next 2 years, Dark Sky Mass will have, the guy that's working on it is gonna work on a second version for where you have mixed areas in different, or areas in different communities, or sorry, different areas in the same community. Like you have in here, we have Natick Mall, we have car dealerships, and that kind of thing versus residential areas. So yes, and then the other thing is that the Dark Sky International says that they're going to be coming out with a new model lighting ordinance too in 2024. So we're also really anxious to get a hold of that one. In the past, they tend to be extremely complicated, which is why we started working on our own. So we'll see if they got the message that it needs to be simpler and easier to apply for an average person. But we have experts, lighting designers in particular, who helped the woman who led the bylaw ordinance, lighting ordinance change in Nantucket. There's a couple of those people who really know how to write these bylaws, because you can write a bylaw, but it also has to be understandable by lighting designers, and it has to be implementable. So he's a really practical guy from that standpoint. Holiday lighting, I agree with you on the mood, and I think the thing with holiday lighting, just like any kind of lighting, is have it on in the evening when you're awake. But then you ask yourself, does it serve any purpose to have it on at midnight when everybody's asleep, especially in a town like Natick or Needham? And my answer would be no. I have ours programmed to turn off at 9:30 at night, which is, I think, pretty reasonable. But you could have them turn off a little bit earlier, depending on when your neighbors and when you're going to bed. In terms of I haven't seen anything particular up till now about holiday lighting specifically, but I could look for that. But I agree. I mean, this dark time of the year, it does seem kind of fun. And to me, these lights are sort of like mini stars. So you can't see the stars, right? You put on these little lights and it sort of feels like stars. So, and then the car headlights and the glare, totally agree. It's something that we talk about a lot, too. We are not pursuing legislation particularly about that. I think it would probably need to be done on the federal level because of the highway Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Department. I think that's what they're called. I think they would probably be the ones who,
You have to get booted.
yeah. But it is, I have trouble too. I have a smaller car, and it's a lot of glare in your mirrors too, and they're up so high. And then the mental health study, I took note of it, and I will find it and send it to you, or send it through Doug.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can send resources like that, and I'll get them out through email.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's good. And Brindley, you might have set the record for batching up your questions. Good for you. So I see there's a hand up for Metro West, and I'm also I want to thank Pat, although I'm not enjoying it. I see you folks are enjoying the food and coffee that you've brought. Man,
We took it out of
went to town. But did someone have a question there?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah, me. So yeah, yeah. If you're ever considering coming down in person to Metro West, you should err on the side of coming, because you never know what Pat's going to bring. He sometimes surprises. So yeah, I had a question about Natick's bylaw, because I think I know a bit about the zoning bylaws and so forth. I've been in town meeting for counted years, 23 years. Yeah. I think it's very similar to Sarah, but I know that there are the lighting bylaw, but I don't even know where they are. I've never seen them, but I've seen the planning board talk about them. It's one of those things that really deserves our attention. And one guess as to why the single and double families might not be there is because a lot of those are by right, by right developments, control of individuals with special permit. I've seen a lot of special permit hearings where lighting is. The planning board itself didn't have a lot of discussion with permits, whereas as of right, it's the building written pretty much more clearly. So I assume that that as of right can be regulated as well, and you just have to do it. And I think it's maybe time to start looking at those. I was going to start off by saying I wish that our last two speakers were reversed, because last week we had the community development director and the environmental planner here, and if we had heard your presentation, we would have had a bunch of questions to ask about what's going on. But maybe next time that we can ask. And I know that this year they're scheduled to redo the stormwater. And see them focusing on that many things. Maybe this in line to start doing a and some of us more educated about what the bylaw is and how it's created. Now Pat has a question. I'll defer it to him. I have a couple of quick ones. I'm not sure I have a question with it, a comment.
Let's take Pat's questions, and then I know Cindy's got her hand up, but Anne may well have responses to what Martin has said.
Yeah, I could. Do you want me to respond now, Doug?
Sure. Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
So, Martin, the other thing that I didn't mention, but that I know about, is that there's also a building code, and we've tried getting into that cycle because the building code is updated like every 2 years or something like that to get lighting in there. So that would probably apply to residences as well. And then there's also the energy code. And the energy code, it does not apply to residences, but it could apply to large residential buildings like an apartment building or something like that. That's several layers of towerish, and then commercial establishments.
Right. Yeah. So stuff, and I sort of think I know a little bit because Sarah and I have been on town meeting for over 20 years, and all the zoning bylaws go by town meeting, and all the regular bylaws go by. All this other stuff like building codes, I don't even know where
it's state level.
Oh,
state level.
Oh,
the energy code and the building code are both state level.
But there must be something that's town to be done by the town.
Yeah, but maybe we could go to Cindy first, because I think she had her hand up before Pat. But you got to come off mute there, Cindy, or where'd she go? Oh, there you go.
So I was busy in the kitchen and I made a list too.
You can see if you can.
But I'm gonna start with so as I said, I grew up in the area, and then I was in Roslindale for a long time, and then when I moved here, suddenly I'm driving between my mom's and here, driving up Route 16, and then 135, and I thought that this was new, but those pedestrian crosswalk light posts, the first time I came across those, I felt completely blinded, and there were people standing there and I couldn't even see them. And is there research? I'm not sure how much of that light goes up into the sky, but is there research? And I once, when I first got here, I don't know, I tried calling somebody in the town of Wellesley to say, yo, have you guys thought about this as a safety issue? I mean, you're trying to make it safer, but if drivers don't see the people that are standing there waiting to cross the street, you completely defeat the purpose. And the lights that they have that are from above shining down are perfect because they don't blind the driver and they illuminate somebody standing in the crosswalk. And now I see, I live on Lincoln Street, so I don't go through the center of Natick at night. But I know that we have similar kind of thing here. Those like, I don't know, 3 foot, 2.5 foot light things where there's a pedestrian crossing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. A light, a flagpole light. If there's now a law that you can keep your flag flying all the time, as long as you have it lit. And it's yeah. Is there anything, do you know anything about that? Or how, is there a way that you can have that and not be lighting up the night sky? And talking to your neighbors, you said that you sort of figured out that your neighbor was going to be amenable to a conversation. Well, I've been prohibited from discussing with my mom's best friend who's across the street the situation of their light shining in the window when I'm at my mom's house. Who is, I mean, they're also on the Western Forest and Trail, like they're on that group. So we know that they are, but it's still like, so I'm not going to rock that boat, but is there a part of your site that sort of like, how do you approach somebody? How do you, and what if they aren't sympathetic? Like, and then I'm involved with a family newsletter, and I'm thinking, well, this would be a cool, because we have a shared property, this would be kind of a cool topic to write a little, like 3 sentences and then put a link. And I'm thinking maybe there's like a little 1-minute video or a 3-minute video, or those slides that I really like the slides. I don't know if you'd be willing to share and they probably came from your website, but the one that showed the different kinds of light, and the light going straight down, and then the light gets reflected, the light that goes through the window, the light that that one. And then the other one of how do you change, where you had the 5 different aspects of lighting. I think it was 5, where you
5 principles for outdoor responsible.
Yeah, I really liked those 2 slides. Those are the ones that I remember from your presentation that I think really help convey. They convey a lot of information very well without a lot of words. Yep. And I'm gonna see if here at this house we can go back to a light that comes on when you walk up the steps instead of having one that's on all night. Because one of the downstairs, I'm in a 3-story house but it's apartments, and the woman on the first floor leaves at like 4 a.m. because she's a nanny, and I think she has to start work at 5 where she goes over in Wayland. And so for some reason she wants it on all night. It makes her feel better. But so see if I can work on that. But I don't know about the garage. Let's in the backyard on Moore Street, like there's a garage light that shines all night. I'll just say, there was an instance last year or 2 summers ago when there was an event on the Common, and they had all the big lights that they put up to shine, and that somebody forgot to turn them off. And I reported it on C-Click Fix, and within 24 hours they were off. Well, that was very satisfying.
So I think you've given Anne a lot to respond to, and I think Brinley also put a link in the chat.
Thanks, Brinley.
That diagram, but go ahead, Anne, and then I know Sarah's got a question, but also I think Pat did too. So,
okay, so I think what she was talking about in terms of the pedestrian crossing light posts those are called bollards. I think they're the ones that are like 3 feet high.
Yes.
So a lot of times, they have designs that actually shield the light, and then they have designs that don't shield the light. So it could be a problem with the design, and it could, by, you know, the choice, of the design was an issue. And then the other thing is the choice of lighting color is inside, because the bluer and brighter that it is,
yeah,
the more it blinds, because it's right at that level when you're driving. We had the same issue in Needham, and I used straight C-Click Fix to complain about it. And it didn't take overnight, but it took a couple months, and they changed them out to warmer light bulbs.
They did. Wow,
Yeah.
because these are very white on the coming through Wellesley, right through Wellesley Square.
Yeah.
They're very white. Isn't that interesting? Okay.
So, and the other thing to know is like perception of glare is really different between different people, but older people tend to struggle with it more because of emerging cataracts and things like that. When I have something that I'm trying to leverage, and my neighbor, we live in a 2-family, and my neighbor is in her 75 to 80 range, and she's really sensitive to the issues of older people. So she's on that like right away. She's like, I'm this age, and I'm, you know, it's really a problem for me, and it's a problem for people my age. And you know, she really speaks up. And baby boomers have a big advantage because you're, you know, numerous right now. So use your power. All right, so that's that. The bollards, the light, the shielding, because sometimes they have, like, you can see they have little louvers, like 3 louvers, and that shields light. At the same time, it pushes it down onto the sidewalk so people can see, but it's also visible by cars, but just not blinding them. The flagpole lights. So another program that Dark Sky International has is a luminaries accreditation program. So they have flagpole lights that actually light flags from the top that they have on their website. And so it's a little bit more onerous to install than one that's in the ground and uplighting. But it's, I think, you know, it does the job of flag lit overnight, but it also mitigates the issues with light pollution because it's again shielded and coming from the top going down.
How would I find that? Where would I go for that?
So that's on Dark Sky International's website. So it's darksky.org.
Yeah.
And there's, just look for a program of
if I just search on flagpole
or something like that.
Okay.
I can, you know, and if I can find the exact one on flagpole lighting, but they do talk about it.
Thank you.
They also have on their website a section on how to talk to your neighbors, which was your other issue.
Great.
You're not the first one. And yeah, it's there's some neighbors that I wait a long time to talk to about because I don't know them, but I wait till after I figure out what makes them tick. So if their issue is cost, then talk to them about that. If their issue is, if they're really into the environment, then I'll talk to them about, you know, why it's important to have the lights off at night. If they're, you know, if they're older, I may talk to them about glare. You know, just, I don't try to set a time frame to talk to them. I wait till the time is right, and after I figure out what's the in with them, what makes sense.
Great.
There's lots of videos about light pollution out there. Some, I don't know if they're short as 1 minute or 3 minutes, but definitely in the 15 to 20 minute range. There's TED Talks. There's even one talking to what Martin's question came up before, like why should you have a bylaw in your town that addresses this issue? So there's one that James Lowenthal made specifically for Massachusetts in advance of when Nantucket was trying to get their bylaw changed. But you know, there's just general ones out there about light pollution. Yes, in the terms of the 5 principles, I have got maybe not here, I've got cards, but they're also available online at the Dark Sky International website. And I think that's probably where I got the light pollution diagram too. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but I'd be happy to send out my presentation to everybody so you can just take the slides as you need them off of there.
Yeah, that would be great. If you send that to me, I'll put it up on a Google Drive and send people the
Sure.
link. I know Pat had some questions, and then after him, Sarah.
Well, I just had one comment and question. What Cindy said about these pedestrian signs. We have them right out the window here at night when your car approaches them. They're real bright back at you.
Oh, the retroreflective lights?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bright yellow.
Yeah, yeah.
And that can be a little bit tough.
Full disclosure, I used to work at 3M.
It
makes material. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, Harlan House, we have some night there going time on and off, but really ask for a modification. They have a shield put around them so they.
We're losing a lot of Pat's audio. I don't know if we can move the owl a little bit closer to him, or
Not really. They there's nothing there. There's no gap.
I was asking if there's kind of ready-made shielding for floodlights. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And yes, there is, and actually there's also a shield for like if you have a light on your porch and it clips onto your light bulb. That's available. And then the ones that I'm thinking of, I can't remember what exactly they're called, but if you have a floodlight that's rounded, it doesn't work, but if they have a rim on it, it does, and you just clip it onto the rim. So you have to look and see, but I can send that information too. So all right, so I'm gonna take a note. So the two types fields. I'll send those two. Okay. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Sarah.
So I guess I have more comments than questions, but just besides older people having trouble, people with light colored eyes, such as myself, have trouble. So when you're an old person with light eyes like me, glare really becomes an issue. One thing in terms of the town's street lighting, it's probably 12 or 15 years ago now, the town redid the street lighting. And it was definitely an improvement over what they had before in terms of how much glare was coming off them. I know that before they did that change, I could go out in our backyard and see minimal amounts of stars. And afterwards, we could definitely see more, including a woman who graduated 5 years after I did from college, piloted the space shuttle, and we actually could see it from our backyard fly overhead.
The shuttle or the station?
Oh,
the space station.
The space station. Anyway, she flew overhead and I could see her, and that was very exciting. But in terms of questions, you just answered, I think, one of my questions, which was about porch lights. We have a very small porch, and the light it's under the roof of the porch, but the porch itself isn't a big roof, so I'm guessing that it kind of still scatters out the side. So that's definitely something to look into. One question I did have, which I think is probably gonna, I'm guessing there's not a big solution for this. You caught us at just the wrong time after we just bought a new fixture for our post lantern. And I am guessing
Brinley is probably not happy about it.
I am guessing Brinley lives across the street from us. So I am guessing that there's probably not an easy way to take that fixture and do anything about it short of putting like a big Martian cone head on top of it or something. But I
take it's got glass sides in the light bulb. Inside is not shielded, right?
Correct.
Okay.
We bought it like a week ago. So
not just glass sides, but kind of a curved glass top.
Yeah.
So it's definitely casting light upward as well.
Yeah.
So Like some people will do a little bit of a DIY project. If the glass is curved, that might be a little bit more difficult, but if it has straight sides, there's some, it's frosted kind of plastic material that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's, and then you can just apply it to the glass. It frosts it, so it acts like a diffuser, so it's not as intense.
Okay.
The type of light bulb that you put into could make a difference. So if it's one where the elements are not an unfrosted bulb, I would change it out with a frosted bulb. And then you can reduce the lumens too, because maybe you could say, well, I don't need that many lumens. And then do you need it on all night long, or do you, put it on a timer such that it goes on at dusk and then off at 11 or something like that? There's for $25 to $30, you can get a timer that if you usually have a switch inside your house, you just put it in as a replacement for that switch. We did that at our church, actually, a lot of them, because nobody's really using the building after 11, but we have people that come in for meetings and things like about that
Yeah,
time.
we have that in our church as well. You step into the stairwell and you think it's totally dark, and as soon as you appear, it lights it up and then it turns it off after a couple minutes. So yeah. All right, thank you. That's helpful.
Great, thanks. Brinley, you had your hand up again.
Yes, I'm curious if there's any conversation with light pollution and the current push to switch daylight savings time, and if there's been any conversation around that, and the health pros and cons, etc.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I think that conversation is more about human beings, like how the
circadian rhythms.
Circadian rhythms, and the fact that the changing an hour twice a year really throws people for a loop. And then also just like the time zones you can have on one side of the time zone, you can have wake up time or sunrise at 6 o'clock, on the other side at 7. So that makes a big difference on how people are living and experiencing the daylight too.
I just meant specifically because we're looking at keeping it instead of leaving it back, and I didn't know if that would
I haven't heard anything
affect the light pollution
with crossed in the intersection with light pollution. No. I think it's more like when people are putting on lights, it doesn't really matter what time it is. It's more about when dusk happens. So it's gonna happen. It's a regular seasonality.
Pat, did you have something else?
Yes. I work with, the trails groups and some of the native. And we're experiencing some problems, certain parking areas. Right. People, a lot of them are young, party and talk to each other, put the stuff out of it. Even when there's a barrel.
That happens. That happened to you too.
So talk about improving some of these parking areas. So because it does, if you have more light, it does kind of areas people come in park.
And if you could repeat his question again too. I don't know why Pat breaks up more than others, but
so I think the question is, does adding lighting, does it actually discourage people from coming in and I guess it's partying, right? Or
Yeah, they park, they do
We try to
communicate with each other, they turn on music and stuff, and there are places that are not that carefully or frequently monitored by it. So, and then they just trash out of the car.
I think what the studies have shown is that there's no link between crime and more lighting. I was thinking when you were talking about in Needham, there's young people that will walk into the woods, in the middle of the woods, to this place called High Rock.
Yeah.
And they'll party there and leave all their beer bottles and everything, and there's not an ounce of light in there. So I think kids will be kids and they'll just do what they want to do, whether there's more lighting or not, or no lighting. I think really having lighting on is, to me, it's more about a lot of times liability, just making sure that people don't trip and say, you know, we were on your property, we were on this public property and you know, we couldn't see what we're doing, we tripped and we had, you know, this many medical bills and we'd like you to reimburse them because you were negligent. It's more in that direction than, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely the case downtown Natick. The bank that owns half of the parking lot that the church owns the other half of, they're very concerned about liability and keep it well lit all the time. Yeah. So I shouldn't say well lit, overly lit, basically, yeah.
And like I was saying, that experience that I had over the weekend where they were overlighting, you know, but it was to sell cars by 35 times. And the other thing that I think was really interesting is, you guys seem like a pretty, you know, interested group, is that the perception of light is on a logarithmic scale. So in order to perceive a difference in lighting, you have to increase or decrease it by 10 times, really. So just throwing that out there.
Is that really true for everybody? Because I feel like I can see much smaller incremental change. I find that to be fascinating.
Yeah, that's what they were telling me. I mean, this is big PhD people, so it's over a little bit over my head, but that's where they were saying. And but the other thing I think that's important to notice, to remember, like in your head, in terms of foot candles. So foot candles, not everybody's, it's a measurement of the light that's hitting a surface, is you really just need 0.2 foot candles, and anything over that, studies have shown, does not increase pedestrian perception, like safety. So they've looked at it on a wide variety of people, but you're right in the sense that people's eyesight is really biologically based, and so it's individual. So they have to look at, just generally speaking, in these studies, and get a lot of data for a lot of people. And of course, there's a range. Sure.
That's incredible. Is there a link to that? I'd love to read that study.
I've asked for it because I wanted to see it to my town engineer, is really on board on light pollution, and he's asked me this question, like, what's the minimum light we have to have out there so people can see, right? That's the question, because Needham has this control system where they can dim, and then they were supposed to have this agreement with Eversource, such that they only pay for the electricity that they're using for streetlights. And when I contacted him to get some ammunition for some fodder for my presentation at the hearing at the end of October for the dark sky bill, it turns out that, yeah, they have this agreement, but it has not yet been implemented, so they're paying tariffs. But anyway, what I'm saying is that if you can put the control system on and then dim to the least amount that's required so that people can see what they're doing, you can save a lot more money for the town budget.
Thank you. So I know Rick has his hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. Comment. One is the car that I have now has an automatic headlight dimmer, which is fantastic. As you do want brights when you're thinking about animals on the road at night, things like that, but you don't want them other times. And you can buy up when your car dealer offers that. It's very helpful to other people, I imagine. Question: is there any intersection between light and noise? Like some light buzz, street lights buzz incredibly annoying. Maybe I don't know if LEDs do this. Maybe going back to the old days, but I remember on our street in Needham, it drove me nuts. You hear it.
Yeah, I've never had a streetlight buzz actually that I've been aware of, but I have had LEDs in my house that have buzzed, and I replaced them because they're annoying. But you drew back up a really good point that I wanted to talk about too, and didn't bring it up. Is that light pollution is a nuisance, and you can make a parallel to light pollution with noise pollution. Like, you would not accept that your neighbor is making a ton of noise so that you can't sleep. So there's a lot more, I guess generally speaking, not for some people in this audience, but generally speaking, people aren't thinking about light pollution the same way that they're thinking about noise pollution, and they're more lackadaisical about it. But both of them are nuisances, and hard, if you have those noise and light nuisances, it really can degrade on your quality of life. So I know you were working too, Rick, in the past on the quiet communities, which is about leaf blowers and large engines that making noise in the neighborhoods for cleanups. And there's a whole other discussion. I mean, all that's not good for ecology either, and it's not good for human health. But the noise pollution part is really hard on people's nerves.
Good point. So we are approaching 10:30, which probably means we should wrap up. But Anne, I was wondering if you could maybe close by when Rick did his introduction, he reminded us that you had done a dark sky event for us at a previous Earth Day and have agreed to do so in the future. So I know I wasn't able to attend that, I don't think. So maybe you could give us just kind of the quickest snapshot of what that was all about and what we should look forward to for the next event.
Yeah, so part of the reason we did that is just to get people out and being used to walking in the dark or in low light conditions, because a lot of times it's just people are afraid because they don't have the experience of it. And so we walked, it was a sunset walk, and we walked up the hill while it was still light out. And then when we went by the, when we were up there, we saw the sunset and the stars come out. So it was a time to talk about why, darkness was important and how it felt in people's fears, just to be able to verbalize them and then to live through it with others, that fear, so that maybe it can be a little bit diminished. And then we had recommended to bring red light, like red headlights.
Headlamps.
Yeah, like headlamps, like a miner's kind of light, because the red light is when you want to see the stars, that doesn't dilate your pupils so that you can have a full experience, and it's enough light usually to be able to see on your way down, even on a bumpy path. So Blake, was there anything else that I missed about that?
No,
okay.
But it did, because we did walk down the path, Pagan Hill, to the parking lot, which is a 10-minute walk with roots and rocks. And, it's the red light, I'll just say this too, was a lot more effective than my cell phone's, flashlight, which I use a lot, to just watch what I'm doing at night.
Yeah, the cell phone flashlight is actually pretty blue, so it has the same kind of effects as
right, but it means you need less light around.
Yeah.
Because you do almost you have your phone, you always have the capacity to see, even if it's a lock in the door you unlock.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Well, a fantastic presentation. Lots of good discussion. Really appreciate that. There was a lot of the discussion focused on solutions, and
we're gonna go fix some of our outdoor lights.
Yeah. So it's been
coming to check. The light police are coming. We know where you live.
Really, really valuable. I appreciate you coming, Anne. And
thank you again so much for the opportunity to talk to all of you. And yeah, it's my passion. So I'm always happy to bring, to bring the information to people and then to help them along their path of change, whatever that path might look like.
So there were a few links in the presentation, and I think a few others came up in the discussion. So we often do a follow-up email to people with some of the links.
Yeah, and if you do get a chance to send me a copy of your presentation, and I can include a link to an online copy of that.
Just the last thing on that, Doug. And would you be willing to put I know you're incredibly busy. So you would not get a fast response from Ann, let me tell you. But
Unless I do it right away.
yeah, okay.
Got
So you still remember the game, but would you be willing to put a contact information on that? If people have questions or one of them?
Yeah, and I think it was in the presentation on the second to last slide in terms of resources. So yeah, I'm around.
But she is busy, so don't bother her.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Next week we're going to be focusing on immigration crisis, and again, hopefully on the solution front, what we can do. Marge Roberson and Susan Kang will be joining us to talk about that, and that will actually be our last session of the year. We'll take a couple of weeks off for Christmas and New Year's, and we can welcome 2024 to everybody amazingly. But I think we're good. Martin, if you want to turn the recording on.